So round one of the 2024 NFL Draft was a history-making moment in a history-making night in a number of ways. Quarterbacks went 1 through 3, which has only happened a few times in the modern draft era. And then you had a record of 6 quarterbacks going in the first 12 selections, which tells you just how desperate teams are to get the most important position in the game right. You had 6 of the first 12 picks were quarterbacks. I don't think anybody realistically saw that coming. 4 certainly, maybe 5. There was talk about maybe a 5th, but 6 of them? Holy crap. No surprise was that there was a big run on offense at the top of this draft, because not only are you talking about the nature of today's game, but also where the talent was in this draft class at the top. It was on the offensive side of the ball, so you had 14 straight offensive players taken to start the draft, which is a record. I believe the previous record was like 8 straight. And then you had the most offensive players ever drafted in round 1, which was 23. So again, just speaking to this year's draft, especially early on, was about the offensive side of the ball. That's where the marquee, big name, special talent was. And I agree with that. And what that meant for the first round was there were only 5 draft day trades. Smaller moves. There was no big sizable shift. And that's in part because a lot of the value was shifting down the board. There were runs on certain positions. You think about 6 quarterbacks going into the top 12. That knocks all the other talent at all the other positions down. So you get to a place, you start getting into the teens and into the 20s, you start to feel like you're sitting in the catbird seat, and no matter which way the rest of the board kind of falls, you can feel pretty good about yourselves in terms of what you're going to walk away with on night 1. So, all of that said, even though this draft went to form in a lot of ways, it had some big surprises in there too, it was a fun night 1. So let's talk about night 1. The winners and losers of day 1 of the 2024 NFL Draft. I'm going to start with the New York Jets. I thought they played this thing perfectly, beautifully. They squeezed something out of the Vikings to move up 1 spot. They gave up 10 in 203. The Jets did it in return. They get 11, 129, and 157. So often we can focus on the teams that have multiple first-round picks that make the big spectacular move up or the big spectacular move down. There's more than one way to win the draft game. And I thought the Jets did on Thursday night by saying, hey, Minnesota, we got other teams coming up, wanting to call us, wanting to trade, force Minnesota to basically bid against itself, and in the process, strengthen your position in round 4 and round 5 and only have to bump back 1 spot to do so. Job well done. And on top of that, Fashanu addresses an offensive line that really needed some talent because you've got to prioritize protecting Aaron Rodgers. So well done by the Jets. Looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars, another example of how you play the draft game. If the Jags had taken Brian Thomas Jr. at 17, it would have made a world of sense and hardly anybody would have scoffed at it. They would have said this is the next guy on the second tier after the top 3 wide receivers. So getting him there at 17, his upside is even bigger than the draft spot. But instead, the Jags were able to peel back 6 spots. And in the process, they picked up a 5th rounder, 167 this year, and 3rd and 4th round picks next year from Minnesota just to get the guy for all intents and purposes they would have taken at 17 any damn ways. I don't care how you spin that. That is a job well done by the Jags in terms of understanding the draft game and knowing how to navigate. Also, special shout out for Tony Khan, keeping kayfabe alive and protecting kayfabe, damn it! The Detroit Lions. Not only did you have over 270,000 people apparently in attendance for night 1 of the draft, but then the way the draft kind of played out, you sit there and get to a point at pick 24, the corner from Alabama, Terrion Arnold, who I think on most accounts was a top 10 to 15 talent in this draft. He's sitting there at 24. Detroit's able to move up 5 spots. You could say, sure, they gave up a 3rd rounder to do so, but at that point in time, they're getting a talent that far out exceeds the draft position. And by the way, addresses a massive need, which was the perimeter, the secondary for that Lions defense. Again, job well done. So you can win by trading back and playing the game. You can win by moving up a little bit. And then I look at the Arizona Cardinals. This is a team that had 2 first-round picks and didn't get cute, didn't overthink it. At pick 4, Apparently nobody gave him a compelling enough offer to move down. I understand it. So you just stay put and you get you a difference maker. They needed a marquee player on that offense. They needed a marquee weapon. They got to give Kyler Murray more help, and they did that with Marvin Harrison Jr. And he comes into a spot where he could be wide receiver 1 right away, which is really the type of situation he needed to go into. So you get who many felt was the consensus top wide receiver in this draft, a guy that was being talked about months ago as like the first non-quarterback taken in this draft, would potentially be the number 1 pick if you're a dumbass Bears fan. Duh. Bears football! Instead, they get him at 4, and you got to feel really good about that. And then Darius Robinson at 27 gives them a versatile defensive lineman, somebody they really badly needed. I don't know that he's a big-time difference maker for them, but he should be an 8 to 10-year starter in the league, type of guy you do give a second contract to. And again, the Cardinals needed help on both sides of the ball, and they got it just by staying put and sticking true to their board. And then you come to the winners of the night, in my biased opinion, the Bears! And you know what happened Thursday night, April 25th, in the year of Allah 2024, was really the result of the foundation that was laid last year with how Ryan Poles perfectly executed his strategy and his position sitting with the number 1 overall pick in the draft. And the irony of it, how many Bears fans last night celebrating on social media, the same Bears tards that were part of cult that were sitting there a couple months ago, sitting there dismissing Caleb Williams and everything about him and trying to stand for a mediocre mid-ass quarterback like Justin Fields. Now they sitting there and they're the happiest motherfuckers of all. Well, you know what? So be it. I don't even care at this point, but we know who you fucking are. Own up to that shit, okay? You were wrong and I was right. The real irony here is, for those saying, I can't believe you're praising the Ryan Poles and the Bears and what they did. Last year in the first round, he did exactly what the fuck I said he should do. And he didn't do what fans did want him to do. And as a result, it put them in position to take fucking Caleb Williams number 1 overall. Why in the fuck would I complain about that? I understood the game and the position the Bears were in last year. A lot of you idiots did not. And then at pick 9, I said you have to go offense. You can make arguments for different things, but at the end of the day, the number 1 goal of the program, the number 1 goal was to draft Caleb Williams and then find you a second star, big-time player. And it needed to be on offense because you got to build around Caleb Williams. They took Odunze. They fucking did that. Why in the hell would I sit there and get pissed about that? All I want to think about right now, and you coming, bitches, is how bad Caleb Williams, Odunze, and the fucking Chicago Bears are going to skull fuck everybody in the NFC North, and then they're coming for the NFC, and then they're coming for the Chiefs. That's right, they're going to skull fuck. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, Bears fans are so excited about what happened last night. These fellas turned to their wives and said, I might even make you come tonight. Like, that's how generous they were feeling. What a great, brilliant night. Them wives were sitting there and backing it up going, yeah, 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 yeah. And the guys were going, that's 3 minutes of your life that you're going to love forever. And then you can regret it 9 months later. And then 18 years of child support, bitches. Yeah. But the Bears, big winners. They have to be. Ryan Poles, I have no criticism right now for what he did in the first round this year, because he did exactly what I wanted him to do last year, which laid the foundation and set the table for what happened last night. Not that hard to understand. Now, with that said, you have winners, and there are lots of other teams that I thought did solid to good to pretty good, but I'm not going to sit there and talk about every single team. You've got some losers, and I'll admit that because of the way this draft played out, I didn't think there were as many losers in a traditional sense. Like some might say, well, the Broncos really reached for Bo Nix at 12. They did. Let's be clear. However, not all reaches are the same. And reaching for a quarterback at that spot, knowing they didn't have a second-round pick, knowing that he wouldn't have been there again, knowing you don't want to have to trade up and give up a bunch of capital just to get back into a spot later to take them, like you either have a quarterback or you don't, that's not so egregious, right? But other things are. Your first loser, obviously, the Carolina Panthers. Keep pounding, Panthers! Now, I actually like them bumping up one spot to get to the top of round one to take Xavier Leggett because you get that 5th year on the rookie scale contract. You get that option year. Most importantly of all, you help out Bryce Young, which you had to do because there's nothing around him. But this being a reflection of the trade last year and the dumb dick decision they made. To draft Bryce Young, to move up from 9-1, to be able to take the fucking Keebler Elf, they gave up basically DJ Moore and Tyreek Stevenson in the draft, and then last night the top overall pick, which was Caleb Williams. Plus, pick 122, 2025 second. Because remember, the Bears moved down from 9 to 10 to flip with Philly, so they got 122 in this year's draft. 2025 second. Would you rather Bryce Young or would you rather have all of that? While the Panthers could talk about keep pounding, all that happened was the Bears and Ryan Poles sat there fucking Twinkies and ding dongs into his system, and he was fucking double ram horn skull fucking them all night long. And it's not over yet. It's fantastic. So yeah, Panthers are losers in this one. How could you not? The Buffalo Bills, at the moment, at least at the moment, what they did last night was really questionable. Why would you help out your chief rivals in the Chiefs? Why would you do that? Because you want better draft position on day 3? Yeesh. And then why trade out of the first round entirely and not have the 5th year option available? Now, maybe they're trying to work on something, acquiring a veteran wide receiver, maybe. But to me, if anything, the Bills should have been moving up in this draft, not moving back like they did here. Also look at the Minnesota Vikings 2025 draft. When you look at the variety of moves they made going back to getting into the back of the first round, get that second first round pick when they made the deal with Houston, and then everything else that's happened, like, it's hard to knock them for bumping up one spot to make sure that they got J.J. McCarthy. They had to come out of this class with the quarterback. McCarthy makes some sense. I'm sure they, based off of where McCarthy ended up, it's not so bad. Hard to knock them overall. 17 to go get Dallas Turner, a guy that was being projected as a top 8, 9, 10 pick in this draft. But it is fair to question how wise it is come next year to when you look at the Vikings draft and what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah did. They only have their first round pick, 2 fifth picks, and a 7th rounder, and that's it. That's it. Not good is what I'm trying to say. They basically forced their entire next draft outside of round 1. Not an ideal spot for a team that has a number of holes. While I don't sit there and knock them for the players that they took, it is fair to question what that means long term. The San Francisco 49ers, was Ricky Pearsall really the best wide receiver on the board at that point? If you this, like, why not have the trade for Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk already done? Like, maybe you're getting there and it's going to be close, but it's not done yet. Why sit there and spend that first rounder? So I questioned a little bit about whether that was the best receiver on the board, and then I questioned, like, what does this mean? Like, how do you not have a trade for Deebo already done or a trade for Ayuk already done? Shaky to me, right? Not a huge loser, but just kind of questionable. But there was one clear-cut loser that wasn't named the Carolina Panthers in this first round, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. What the fuck was that? You just backed up the Brinks truck for Kirk Cousins and gave him a 4-year deal with like $100-something million in guaranteed damn money, where reasonably, even the earliest you can logically think about trying to get out from that deal is 2026 and probably even before 2027. You go and draft Michael Penix Jr. at number 8 when he's already going to be a 24-year-old rookie. Raheem Morris and Terry Fautanu, the GM, talking about the Green Bay model. No, the Green Bay Packers model is sitting there and drafting a 21-year-old quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love, respectively, and having them sit behind a Hall of Famer for 3 years. And when they take over, they'll be 24 years old. You're forgetting that whole entire part of, oh, by the way, they would also draft these guys in the 20s. When they had the ability to take that kind of luxury pick at that point. It's one thing to say you're playing the long-term game here, but Christ's sakes, by the time Penix would start, he's going to be 27, 28 years old, and then you've maybe got 2 years at most to evaluate whether or not you're going to make that massive investment on him on a second contract. Like, who the fuck does this? If you're going to do this, then draft J.J. McCarthy because he's 21. And you could say he has more upside and needs more coaching. And I would say you look at Penix and you say, he needs more coaching in terms of accuracy and his mechanics. They both suck dong. But Penix is the type of guy that you draft thinking about he's going to play this year or at worst next year. You either basically just sunk an 8th overall backup for 2 to 4 years, or you damn yourself to if Cousins gets hurt again and then Penix comes in and plays well. Now you got Kirk Cousins sitting on the bench, which is just a dead cap disaster waiting to fucking happen. You just don't do that. Now the only thing, if Falcons fans are looking for a silver lining here, the only silver lining I can provide them is back in 2008, they were roundly and unanimously criticized damn near for taking Matt Ryan 3rd overall. And that ended up working out really, really well for them. Big difference was, though, is Matt Ryan was a better prospect coming out of Boston College. He was a younger prospect coming out of Boston College than Penix Jr. is coming out of Washington. And by the way, Matt Ryan started from day fucking 1. If you're going to do this, then trade back a little bit. If you're going to do this, why would you sign Kirk Cousins to begin with? That doesn't make any goddamn sense. To sit there and talk about you want long-term stability and a succession plan at the position, talk about Arthur Blank. You know what you do then? You sign Gardner Minshew and let him start for 1 year. And then you fucking draft Michael Penix and have him ready to play in 2025. What you don't do is basically create a scenario where he doesn't touch the field realistically, barring an injury, until 2026, 2027, or even 2028. That's fucking idiotic. That suggests a front office and a general manager that didn't think this out. That suggests a front office and general manager that doesn't know what they're doing. How could you look at that last and give any indication that this is a front office, a leadership group, an ownership group that has a goddamn clue? You can't. Now, at the end of the day, if Michael Penix comes in and he plays as a big-time NFL quarterback for a decade, it's not going to matter as much. But it will always matter to some degree. And as a general rule, you have exceptions, sure, but as a general rule, when draft moves, draft picks are almost universally panned, they have a tendency to not work out too well. The reason that usually everybody pans them is because it's so fucking obvious that it's a dumb dick move. Like what the Falcons did on Thursday night might be one of the dumbest things I've seen in the draft in a long, long time. And oh, by the way, it sucks for Michael Penix Jr. too, because he's basically getting drafted and paid a few $1 million a year to hold a clipboard. Now that sounds like the American dream, make millions of dollars and not do shit. Sign me up for that shit, right? But when you talk about his career and what that means in terms of endorsements and outside opportunities, like this cost him all of that in the short term. Just a fucked up situation. And oh, by the way, you apparently didn't tip off Kirk Cousins and his camp that this was happening until you were on the clock? That does make you wonder how well this was thought out and how well this was planned. Sure doesn't seem like it was to me. But anyways, you can tell me who you thought were the biggest winners and the losers of night 1 of the 2024 NFL draft and why the biggest losers far and away were the Atlanta Falcons.